Okay guys, we're back here at the shop. We are very close. We're done with fabrication. We just have 2 pipes left on the roof and everything will be done with fabrication, and then we can send sandblasting. So Bob is gonna pass by today so he can take these pipes and get them bent, the V in the roof. Now we're on to test fitting stuff, making sure that everything fits nicely. So yesterday we placed the engine. We were supposed to test fit the transmission, but we couldn't because we were missing some of these bolts. They didn't come with the transmission, so I passed by, picked them up today, and now we can put the transmission in just to make sure that we have enough clearance on top and we have enough clearance coming up to the shifter point, because this means we're gonna have to redo a lot of the fabrication if things don't fit up now. Hopefully, fingers crossed, everything will fit. The oil pan and the engine mounts fit beautifully. I love the skid from Fueled Racing. I mean, look at that. There's just the right amount of clearance and it is not touching the firewall anywhere. It's a bit close over there. Let me zoom in. So it's not actually touching, that's just the tape. There is barely, just a couple of millimeters away. Just in case, we will clearance that part. That's why we marked it. We will clearance it because, you know, sometimes when you're putting the engine in, you're tilting it back and stuff, you might accidentally, you know, hit it, and we don't want to, you know, damage the paint and stuff like that after we get it painted. So we're going to clearance that just a little bit. It's very easy to do it now in the fabrication stages. These engine mounts do have like some sort of bushing inside, but they are incredibly stiff. I mean, look, I'm shaking the entire car with the engine. So the fit on the span and the engine mounts is just incredible. And we have a lot of clearance on this side and on this side. And the headers are not here yet, but we're not actually making any headers because the headers will come pre-made by Fueled Racing. They're just a bit delayed because we opted to do 2-inch runners, so they had to custom make them for us, and they also had to make sure that it will clearance around the rack relocation. So right now the rack is not relocated. We'll do that later, but the new headers will. We do not have any issues with the oil pan contacting the steering rack right now, which means when we move it further forward, it will be even better. We'll have even more room. So that's beautiful. So here's the subframe in the rear that Bob basically made. So these are the mounts. He used these 2 holes to center the diff in place. And then there was like a mock-up piece that basically holds the subframe in place. And then these plates were added. And now we have perfect clearance, centered. Everything seems to fit nicely. Really excited. We've also, yesterday they finished doing the radiator mounts. So we have these mounts on top, and then we have these plates in the bottom over here. Don't mind the welding, they're not done. They need to finish it. They're gonna add some gussets over here. And what else? You know, yeah, so he's gonna add some gussets like right around here just to strengthen this plate, but it's a 9mm, so it's pretty stiff. So the radiator basically slots into this piece, so it will drop down and sit inside this hole, and there's a bushing on top of it, and then from the top it's held on with these mounts, just these 2 simple mounts, and that's it. It stops it from rocking forward, front and back. We got these dyno straps that I told you guys about. This is also done. What else do we have? Tunnel is fully welded around and smoothened out so that it doesn't cut into any lines. These holes are done. Our fuel tank mount is also done. That's the welding spot underneath, but I'll show you that in a bit from the top side. So the fuel tank mounting point is also done. This is where the lines will pass through. So you have 2-16, 2-12, 1-10 and 2-8 for the fuel lines. So I'm hoping that this is enough room for it to pass through. It looks like it's enough. If they need to make it any bigger, I don't think it's hard to just, you know, cut out just a bit more, but hopefully it's enough. So now we're gonna put the transmission in, and then we're gonna get our drive shaft length checked. I think this is the last thing we have to scan on this car, so I wanted to show you guys how he does it. Why am I explaining? Anta, explain.
Explain what?
Explain what you're doing.
I'm scanning the car. I'm scanning basically the gearbox, and then we'll use the scan to make a bracket.
But what software are you using?
I can't tell.
Nintendo?
This is Shiny 3D. This is the 3D scanner software, basically.
طيب, how big of a piece can you scan with this? And what's the radius that you can keep scanning it?
You can scan whatever you want,
Like up to how many meters, basically?
as much as you can.
And you can move your laptop and your rig, and you can keep moving.
Yeah. If you put dots everywhere, you can scan like as much as you want. It doesn't matter yet.
Okay. And then when you take the file from this,
basically the scanner should see 4 dots all the time. So basically, if I move like that, okay, and it can't see 4 dots, it can't scan.
okay.
So if you're scanning something large,
علي صوتك.
if there's something, let's say, it has a features like this one, you can minimize the dots and use like a feature scan instead of a laser scan. You use the LED light, but it's not accurate as the laser scan.
Okay.
Okay, so if you need something accurate, you need to place dots everywhere so the scanner can see 4 dots
At all times.
at all time. Basically, if also something is black and shiny, you should spray it a little bit.
You spray it. What do you mean spray it?
Spray it like you put like there's some kind of
Powder spray. Okay, I get what you mean. Okay.
to remove the shiny and the black color. But for the laser, it doesn't matter. It matters, but not that much. What I care about is the mounting point of the gearbox
And the two
and the
holes.
chassis.
Yeah. Okay.
So it doesn't need to be.
And then after you take this file from this, it gives you it in what form?
Give you like an STL file. It's a point cloud basically. So if you zoom, you can see its points.
Oh,
It's
okay.
dots, small dots, And then you get an STL file, and then I use other software for reverse engineering and get software to make the bracket. Okay. So now I'm happy. I got
Enough
those,
points.
Yeah, and these dots. So خلاص. I can generate point cloud, do a mesh, and I can use it to make the brackets.
طب how user friendly was it for you to adapt to this?
It's very easy. It's easy.
He's cocky, right?
Huh?
He's cocky, right?
I'm an engineer, a Viking.
Viking engineer. طب Viking,
Yes.
فرجينا سيارتك.
Oh, it's a very special car. What you saying? Go see it. You see, have this point, and the 4 holes. خلاص, now I'll mesh it.
راح.
So this is after the mesh. Okay. Now I can align it, or I can align it in the CAD software. So I'll save it as an STL.
This is like the 5th time you save it.
Oh, this is the first time. I stay at file, apply, saving, done. Boom.
طب يلا give us the amount.
Tomorrow. Tomorrow it will be ready.
So the next day I had to travel back to Sweden in order to prepare for my next competition in Europe. So in the meantime, I hired a photographer to pass by every now and then and video the updates. And that first scene, you saw some of the brackets and emblems that just came from the laser cutting. And right here, what you can see is the fabricator basically came in to finish welding and fabricating on the car. And what he's doing over here is basically closing off these pockets that come on the 370 and the 350 from factory. They're on the outer side of the chassis rails. And it's basically almost like a 2-inch pocket in the floor. And you need to seal them off once you remove the carpet or gut the car because your foot can get stuck in there. Now, we do have floor pedestals basically, but it would still give a better flat surface for the pedestals to basically sit on. Yeah, so he's just finishing welding it up over here, and then they pulled out the differential because they're preparing the subframe to go to sandblasting and powder coating. So they're gonna pull it out of the car. And right here, they finished installing the overflow tank from the for the radiator. So it's just hidden on the side. We don't really want it to be showing. It's not that pretty. And right here, they also finished doing the strut tower brace. Now, there is a brace basically from the factory, which is what you see on the bottom over there. But I like to add this since I don't feel like the sheet metal over there is structurally that strong. So just a small extra pipe, not a big deal. And then right here, what they're doing is they're preparing the oil cooler to basically weld in a bracket that will go onto the chassis rail that supports the top portion of the cooler, basically as you see over here. So it will be rev knotted onto the subframe basically, and then from the top to stop it from rocking back and forth. They're gonna weld in the small bracket on the chassis so that it can stop the cooler, as I said, moving back and forth, rocking, because that will cause the coolers to basically crack. That's how we have it also on the missile car, and that's where I learned that I need to do that. So they're just stacking in the bracket over there, as you can tell. And then they have the fan in place so that they can do the distance that they have onto the oil filter bracket. So right there, they're placing it where they think will be a good spot for the fittings to pass through. And after deciding and tacking in the bracket, the fabricator over there is finishing welding the bracket permanently onto the chassis. So that would be already threaded or rev knotted, whatever it is. So we have a good fitment. Next is what we've been waiting for to finish the two tubes in the roof, which are the V braces to stop anything coming into the car if the car, God forbid, flips over. And what we were waiting for is the carbon fiber roof skin, since we did cut out the roof in order to weld the cage from the top, as we opted to do that instead of dropping the cage out of the car. So you'd have to cut a hole in the floor, which is something that I didn't want to do. And anyways, I want to run the carbon fiber roof. So they're just taping it in place so that they can get a good reference of where the bars need to go in. Over here, they're finishing closing up some of the holes in the firewall that we forgot about. So in the next couple of days, all the fabrication and welding on the car was complete. So the next step was to completely strip the car from anything that can be damaged in the sandblasting process, such as the steering column, pedals, master cylinders, the front cross member since it is aluminum, and almost every bracket such as the hood and the door hinges were sent separately, and the rear subframe, anything that needed to be sandblasted was sent separately. The car was sent as a bare shell, no brackets or anything attached onto it, on a pallet, since at this point it is almost feather light, in order to make moving it around, flipping it over easy, and to get to every single corner basically on the car. Right here in the rear, the emblem on the firewall is what you saw at the beginning of the video. They came from the laser
basically cutting, and then they were just welded onto the firewall front and rear. So that's purely just aesthetic. They serve no purpose other than just an aesthetic thing. Every single hole on the rear and front firewall obviously was sealed off, closed, welded, and the inner tubs in the rear obviously to avoid any water coming into the car. Now, that's basically what I was talking about. That's why we delayed the sandblasting. We were waiting for the roof skin for these two pipes that are in the roof part of the cage. In case, God forbid, the car flips over, we wanted to basically push these pipes as high as possible, so get them as close as possible to the roof in order to create the maximum amount of head clearance that we can get. So as that's the front emblem, so one in the front, one in the rear. These are the brackets, one for the oil cooler, one for the sandwich plate that you saw them welding. Just the plate you see over there on the top of the firewall is basically just temporary. So this is to make the life of the electrician's job easier, the wiring guy. So this is removable in order for him to pin the mil-spec connectors and just make his life easier. Once he's done with the wiring and make sure everything works right, it will be permanently seam sealed over there with the two bolts holding in place. Again, all the firewall has been sealed properly front and rear according to almost every competition series that I know of. As you can tell, the front we're using the factory light brackets and the factory mounting point for the bash bar because I think the best way of doing it is how Nissan did it. Obviously, as you can tell, this car is completely rust-free. So really the main reason we're doing the sandblasting on this car is just purely to completely remove all the factory paint, all the seam sealer, and just get a fresh base in order to get our steeled paint on it, which I'll talk more about later. Again, that's the emblem in the firewall that is purely just aesthetic and serves no purpose. So again, as you can tell, there is no rust at all in this car, but you see over there, there's some seam sealer uh, inside the car, and there's some underneath the car that we didn't get to yet. But the place that is sandblasting the car is basically an expert at sandblasting cars. So like the inner fenders over here, it has this like thick bed liner that the sandblasting can't remove. But since they usually do cars, they have a way of removing it. I'm not sure how they do it, but they basically have their own way of removing it. Again, that's the plate in the firewall, which is going to make the electrician's life easier. Once he's done with wiring in the mil spec, that will be glued in place. That hole will remain over there, which is basically for the nines, all the liquids. But we will be placing like a rubber grommet around it to protect the lines from getting damaged, obviously. Now, as you can tell at this step, the car has not been stitch welded yet, and we do want to stitch weld a lot of key stuff in the car, like the shock towers. But because removing the paint manually and the seam sealer is such a hectic task, so the best time to do it is right after we finish the sandblasting. But we have a window of like a day maximum in order to finish stitch welding and head out to paint before the car starts to rust. Right here, you can see there are some brackets that are permanently in the car, such as the fuel tank. This is the back side of the bracket. There is another part that is removable completely out of the car, so that will be powder coated. Almost every bracket that is completely removable will be powder coated, and stuff like the rear subframe will be powder coated. But some brackets, we cannot get them powder coated since the powder coating will affect how they function, such as the hood hinge and the door hinge. The thick filament can create friction. So now the sandblasting guys are going to start working on the car. They should give us the car in roughly 3-4 days. We'll have a plan set so that as soon as they give us the car, we can stitch weld the entire car in one day and then directly get it into the paint booth in order to avoid basically any rust building up during the time that it's bare metal. So I'm going to cut this episode right here, and we'll continue in the next episode once we get the car back from sandblasting.